I'm sorry, I'm having some audio issues. I'm just going to get on now. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. Seema, I think you're muted.
Not a problem, Pramath. Meanwhile, we'll just welcome the participants and Utkarsh and I will kick it off. Okay. Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm very, very happy to welcome Utkarsh and Pramath to the session. Pramath is having a few audio problems. There he is. I think it's going to be a fun, engaging session, especially since I've known Utkarsh for almost more than 7-8 years now.
Yeah.
And, I'll begin with Utkarsh. I know him from, as someone who studied to do engineering and then went into a liberal arts college to do the YIF, and then I think went on to do an MBA, and I think he's doing something else now. What are you up to these days, Utkarsh?
So among other things, yes, absolutely. Seema was my editor at Mint, and she's helped me become a better writer, I feel. So currently, in addition to my work at Network Capital and FIRE, I also am a student of philosophy at Oxford. And I'm really trying to democratize the understanding of philosophy for modern millennials. And every few years, I go back to school. And when Seema invited me to speak about the importance of continuous learning, I thought that Harappa School of Leadership would be a great platform to do so.
And Pramath, where did your life intersect with Utkarsh? And Utkarsh, did you ever think, Pramath, that Utkarsh would end up in Oxford doing what he's doing today?
With Utkarsh, you should not try to predict what he will do in the future. So obviously, no, I didn't, but that doesn't mean to say that I did not expect the world of Utkarsh. He was always somebody who was very special. He was part of the very first cohort of the Young India Fellowship. He was one of the 57 young men and women that we picked that year. So he was part of a very special cohort. And we knew how to pick people. That's all I can say. I do remember him from his admission interview, because I actually took his interview. If I remember correctly, Utkarsh, unless I'm...
Yes, I was... I was interviewed by you.
But I would have never, when I met him then, imagined that he would have taken this path. And it's not, again, like I said, there's so many paths people can take, and he could have taken many different paths. And I think from where he is right now, he can also go off on so many different paths. So that's the exciting thing about careers and people like Utkarsh. And I guess what we are going to talk about today.
So both of you, and you can answer it one by one if you like. Pramath, as someone who has set up so many different institutions, do you feel that, and of course now Harappa and Harappa School of Leadership, do you think really the time has come when people believe that they have to continuously educate or continuously upscale or continuously add something to their repertoire to sort of then do, to do better, or to make sure that their careers sort of last longer? Is it becoming more and more essential? And I remember this conversation with Chris Dede of Harvard, who said, we now have to have a 60-year curriculum. We can't no longer just study for 20 years of our life and think it's over and done with.
Yeah, I mean, I think that many people have spoken about it, and I think Chris talked about the 60-year curriculum, but Linda Grattan, who Utkarsh knows about, wrote this book about the 100-year life. And so everybody's been talking about this. Everybody's been talking about multiple careers within one life, and those careers having no connection to each other, ostensibly, which means that you have to keep learning. So I think the futurists, if I can call them that, or people who study trends, are all saying this. Is everybody yet absorbing it? I'm not sure, because it's pretty daunting to think that, you'll have to constantly keep learning all the time. Learning is not easy. But I do think that a lot of people who are aspirational and who are driven and who are ambitious are already doing this. Utkarsh is a good example of that. But I think if you have drive and ambition, and if you want to keep doing new things, and you're naturally curious, and you want to do something different, and stay at the cutting edge and succeed and be generally adventurous, then you have no option but to keep learning. And that certainly is true. I mean, I certainly find it challenging that if you are going to do something today, you have to just keep abreast of what's going on. Look, Seema, you are now running these webinars, right? From commissioning Utkarsh to write columns to now commissioning us to do these video things, and you have to figure out how to do the chat box and the Q&A and the start the webinar and not do anything wrong. And it's all live. I mean, you're not used to doing live. 5 years ago, you would have been scared of doing anything live. Now you're on live television, right? So
I'm having fun at my expense because I keep complaining how I have to do everything myself. But having said that, Pramath and Utkarsh, why don't you step in and say you've studied almost every 2 years of your life, almost 2 years, and you now have a PhD going ahead. I mean, how are you going to sort of, why do you think it's necessary, and what are the 2 or 3 things you've taken away from this continuous journey of learning?
Yeah. So let me start with a story. So I graduated from the Young India Fellowship by Ashoka University about 10 years back. I was part of the first cohort. And towards the end of the program, I got a couple of awards, Torchbearer Award, ELM, etc. And Pramath gave a speech a few days before, the award ceremony. And it was to the tune of look for your World War moment. He was talking about a particular historical character and how that particular person stepped up during a high intensity moment. And that moment sort of changed the arc of history. And after he changed the arc of that particular person's career. So that stayed with me. When I remember when I was walking up on stage to collect the awards, Pramath was there, etc. I remembered that. And since then, actually, I've gone back to my notes of the Young India Fellowship every few years. And I went back to our initial vision that we used to set. We had to imagine our life 10 years since graduation. And I had written down something. And World War, that particular analogy that from Pramath's lecture was there. And I jotted down how I felt on receiving that award. Surprisingly, my life has turned out not too different from what I had imagined 10 years back. To the person who I spend my life with, where I live, how, etc. There are a lot of commonalities there. And if I have to say the 3 things that really helped me make sense of the life really well is 1, be very serious and proactive about your relationships with mentors. I have read everything that Pramath has ever written forwards and backwards. I can recite it. Second is that if you put a forcing function to your life, in my case, studying every few years, either a degree or some sort of upskilling program, perhaps like the Harappa School of Leadership runs or Ashoka runs or so forth. And the third thing is that you can do anything you want, but you can't do everything you want when you want. And this is something also that I picked up from Pramath. He gave me some advice towards the end of my MBA. I was, grappling with a few offers that I had on the table, and I'd met with an accident. So I was recalibrating things. And he said, go work for a while. Do Microsoft, or do something, get solid work experience. And then a lot of the dots will add up. So I've kept these 3 things very, close to my heart, and it's been helpful. So now, through the fellowship, through my MBA, and through the other things that I've done, I think I've become a bit better at learning at an accelerated pace. And if you look at the 21st century, the 100-year curriculum that we look at, it's all about learning to reinvent yourself over and over again. And what you can't do is that you can't reinvent yourself alone. So if you look at my life today, I run companies, I'm a student, I write, I invest in companies and so forth. It's not that I have 5 different jobs. I have one interest, which is to democratize career navigation for young and ambitious students and professionals. And these are all offshoots of that, from philosophy to capital allocation. So the seriousness and the centricity of the questions really help you guide that. And for me, it's been really helpful to go back to school, put a forcing function, and see how it goes. Tomorrow, for example, I have to submit a really complicated philosophy paper on delusions. Now, I don't technically need to do that. Like, my work life, what I make a month, nothing will change if I don't submit a paper to the best of my ability. But this forcing function, and if you take it seriously, it just enables you to learn a different arc, which I think Harappa School of Leadership is doing in its own way, Ashoka does in its own way, and the institutions that you and Pramath have built or are building are trying to do that. It's a broader movement, I feel.
So I know you have some questions for Pramath, Utkarsh, but before that, we've already started getting some questions, and maybe I'll open this to both of you. It would be good to hear from you. We have Nupur, who wants to say, good profiles like consulting need experience, and to get experience, you need a chance. How do you get that chance? Pramath, do you want to go first?
Utkarsh is the chance guy. I don't think the chance is going to land on your lap. I think if you are saying that you need to get experience before you get to consulting, it's a little bit like the advice I gave Utkarsh, that listen, just go and work somewhere. I think consulting jobs or consulting recruiting is very much about hiring people who are high achievers, who can get stuff done, who had great impact and show great leadership. So if you're getting a job, any job, show that you can do it really well. That's the only thing you can do. There's no perfect experience for consulting, and you can't game this thing. So try and get the best job you can, stick it out, show impact, show your leadership, and use that to get into a consulting role if that's what you want. And by the way, don't be too hung up if you don't get a consulting job. It's okay. There's life beyond consulting. Utkarsh can add to this.
So I think when it comes to chance, Pramath, Seema, and the person who asked this question, I really like this concept of luck surface area. And I'd written about it when Seema was the editor at Mint. And, luck is actually not about getting lucky. I call luck surface area as the intersection of doing great things and telling lots of people. You can't just tell lots of people and not do interesting things, or you can't just do interesting things and expect people will automatically find out the great stuff that you're trying to do. So the way to look at finding your career product market fit is to enhance your luck surface area. And the answer could be consulting, the answer could be product management, and the answer could be a job that you create for yourself. And in a way, Pramath and I also overlapped at Microsoft. Pramath and his organization used to advise some of the high-profile projects that we did. And the role that I had within Microsoft, often working closely with CEO Satya Nadella or the president of the company, Anant Maheshwari or Bhaskar Pramanik, etc., these were not roles that came with a playbook. These were roles that had to be created. And when you have to, when you take ownership of your career, I think you can get a job in consulting or a job, in and around consulting if you focus on looking at what are some things that you can do where you have an unfair advantage. And when you dive deep into that, you will discover that unfair advantage typically comes from following your natural curiosity. In Seema's case, that natural curiosity could be at the intersection of education and great writing. In Pramath's case, it could be at the intersection of solving complex problems, looking at his experience of building world-class education institutions. And third is democratizing it, because not everyone perhaps can end up at Ashoka or Harvard or Oxford or places like that. But can you create that kind of institutions at scale for different kinds of problems that you might come across? So consulting is fine, but I feel that if you look at creating your own product market career fit, it might be you have more agency over the outcome.
That's interesting. So essentially what you're saying is continuous to learn regularly is also in a way your ability to create your own agency and make yourself move from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. And it's never really like you're not ever going from 1 to 10. You'll have to take those many steps to sort of reach where you eventually want to reach. Is that what you both believe in?
Yeah, completely. I think Utkarsh said it best. I think you have to kind of this is about your career is almost like a building, right? You're putting in place piece by piece over time, and layer by layer, floor by floor. And within that, you have many options. So I think that, yeah, you have to think about it in steps. Too many people it's great to have a long-term view, but then too many people make that as the next thing they have to do. I have to get into consulting now. Well, consulting has to first choose you too. And I think Nupur does recognize that. She's asking the question about experience, but then you can't make that kind of connection that if I do this experience and take that chance and get that experience, then I'll get that consulting job. I think there's a little bit of that luck surface idea that Utkarsh is talking about, that you create that luck surface, and if consulting shows up, that's great. May not show up, that there'll be other options that will be very attractive when you look back on it.
So we have another question, but before that, Utkarsh, do you want to ask Pramath something?
I do. I want to comment a bit on what he said and perhaps answer Nupur's question. Can I do that? Okay. Nupur, I want to talk about mimetic theory a bit, and it comes up a lot when we think about careers. Look, mimetic theory basically says that we learn by copy, and the first thing that we copy is that we copy desire. Now, consulting is a prestigious field. So what I've noticed is that many times people want the idea of being a consultant at a well-known firm a lot more than the actual job. At INSEAD, like roughly half the class ends up in McKinsey, BCG, Bain. And many of them, of course, stick it out. But many of them realize that it's actually not a particularly great fit for them. They'll rather be in a different space. I see this in investing. I see this in product management. There will always be this hot new thing and this exciting new sector where people want to be a part of, including myself. Not anymore, but in my relatively early stages of my career. So be careful of the mimetic trap. In Christian mythology, of course, philosophers like Rene Girard, etc., have talked about it. But anytime you feel that you want to do something because others are doing it, that's basically mimetic trap at play. And it's a very dangerous trap. Because look, I admire Pramath. I look up to him. I've learned from him extensively over the past 10 plus years. But I cannot be Pramath. I can be me. I can be the best version of whatever I am very well inclined to do. Pramath is the best at being Pramath. So I think the world will be a more interesting place and also more beneficial for your career and for all our careers if we try to be the best version of ourselves without falling into the mimetic trap that I want to be the next Pramath or the next Seema or the next Nupur. You can't. It's just not going to work out. So authenticity is something that I wanted to ask Pramath a question about. That what does authenticity in leadership actually mean? I know you've written about it in both your books and many of your articles, institution building. What advice do you have for young professionals like us when it comes to authentic leadership?
I think that three parts to this, which sort of mirror the three very important aspects of leadership that I talk about. So first is that you'll only be called a leader if you deliver, if you meet expectations if you get results. And in that sense, for you to be an authentic leader, or to be somebody who claims that you are great or you deserve something, you have to show results. And so your claim and your credibility is only as authentic as what you've delivered. So a lot of people think of authentic leadership is about, being Utkarsh or being Seema and, having your unique DNA. I'll come to that also. But the first aspect of authentic leadership is don't claim to have done things that you haven't. Be authentic about what you've achieved and what you've delivered and what you've learned or who you are in terms of your professional achievements. A lot of people are not. They like to boast, brag, inflate, drop names, and so on. So that's the first part of authenticity. That's important. Be true to what you've actually done. If you say something, you've actually done it, or you can claim it. The second is authenticity with regard to people. So are you saying one thing to Utkarsh and then going to meet Seema and saying, that Utkarsh, he's like ABC, right? Or with Utkarsh, are you thinking something else and saying something else? Are you being transparent? Are you being open? And are you able to have a tough and awkward conversation with Utkarsh? Can you be vulnerable with Utkarsh? And so there's a certain authenticity about the relationship that you are in. You're not doing masking or hiding things and saying something and meaning something else in your relationship with people. So that's the second aspect of authenticity. The first aspect is authenticity when it comes to work. The second aspect is authenticity when it comes to people. And then there's a third aspect to authenticity, which is what you just talked about, which is success to Utkarsh is what it means to him, and how he gets to it is going to be the Utkarsh way, and not the Pramath way, and not the Seema way. So, for example, when I teach or do webinars, I use a lot of personal examples. I have a very close friend who I respect a lot and who's a very senior, very wise, erudite. She says, I think, Pramath, this is not good that you do this. You shouldn't do this, because your examples are your examples, and why should it apply to others? And it doesn't connect. For me, I find it very uncomfortable that you keep sharing so much of your life. And when she first gave me that feedback, I respected her for that. And I thought a lot about it. And then I started changing my way. I wouldn't disclose so much. I would use Utkarsh as an example, or Seema as an example, or something I read in a book as an example, or use famous figures like, Winston Churchill as an example. And then I felt like this is not fun anymore. I don't enjoy talking about whatever I have to talk about. I have to talk about myself. And yes, as long as I'm not coming across like I'm full of myself, I'm boasting, that's what's authentic to me. And of course, I need to guard against perhaps some of the sensitivities of people like this person. And so the feedback is well taken that I shouldn't only talk about myself or be full of myself. That's an example of a way of teaching. I'm just using that as an analogy or as an example that's authentic to me of how I am. A lot of people say that when people write to me to talk to me, I never say no. And I'm always there. I know a lot of my friends who have a lot of respect for, they would flat say, no, I'm busy. I'm just not able to do that. And for a long time, I used to struggle with this and say, how do I say no? I should say no. Others say no. Why am I following? Am I being inefficient? And then I realized that my my real being, my energy, my source of fulfillment, success, happiness comes from being able to do that. And that's me. And that may not be other people. And I'm not like them. And I need to be comfortable in my skin, as people say. So I think that's the third aspect of authenticity. And I would say that to think about authenticity in these three ways has helped me a lot. Am I being authentic to my achievements, to my failures, by the way, to admitting my mistakes and saying, hey, I tried that, it didn't work. And I shouldn't claim success when it didn't. Or in my relationships with people, or in my relationship with myself. So I don't know if that helps, but that's how I think about it.
That's very, very helpful, actually. At some point, Seema, we should do like a specific deep dive on authenticity, envy, difficult decisions. But after we cover stuff, I wanted to
No, so for that you should join the AMP.
Yes. Yeah.
You're going to make
Session.
Utkarsh do an AMP? Oh my God, that'll be something. I mean, we just need one person in the class for.
Oh, no. Pramath, that's going to be fun, actually. But yeah, so the leadership track, really, then that's the reason why you put that in AMP, right, Pramath? Because you wanted us to talk a lot about leadership, which is not just, in terms of frameworks and other things that people know, but really also discovering yourself and understanding yourself, and then sort of, moving ahead.
Absolutely. And I think we'll address Shailesh's question.
No, there's
together.
another question. I'll take that first. This is Ankur. He says, how do you make your life more meaningful, even if after giving your best to your organization doesn't recognize your work? And at the same time, they know they cannot afford to leave you, but you can afford to leave them, Ankur. But anyway, I'll leave it to the two of you to pick up that question and answer. But how do you make your life meaningful if your organization is not recognizing your work, or you think your organization is not recognizing your work?
You go first.
Okay. So look, it depends on the size of the organization as well. So let me give you a micro case study of myself at Microsoft, where I did feel fairly well recognized at different stages, slightly less recognized at different stages. And I'll tell you how I felt and how I dealt with it. So in Microsoft, I got a chance to work with fairly senior leaders when I worked with some of them on really high visibility, high impact projects. That was super helpful to me personally, because I was working towards causes and missions that I cared about a lot, like Atal Innovation Mission, building smart villages and so forth. But it also created a bit of a dynamic in the organization where people said, oh, he keeps working on strategic projects. Who will work on actual revenue targets? Who will actually get a lot of the nuts and bolts done? And initially, I've tried to brush off that feedback, say, oh, this is perhaps envy talking. Perhaps somebody did not get the opportunity. Maybe that's why that's happening. But then I went to some of my mentors, including Pramath, and discussed like, hey, how should I be really thinking about my career within the company? I'm doing pretty well, but like, is there a blind spot somewhere here? And the answer was that you get hired for a role only if you're exceeding expectations on the core job that you have. Will you be given credit for the extra stuff that you do? And it is possible that your core job gives you limited credit and your side projects end up giving you a lot of access to opportunities and growth that leads to disproportionate impact. At least that's what happened in my case. I kept making sure that my main job at Microsoft, I'm always on it. Like my numbers are in place, my relationships are solid. And then I went and created projects that I personally cared a lot about. And some of them led me to Davos, some of them led me to the Chief Minister's office, and eventually to the Prime Minister's office in the country as well. But none of that would have happened if I hadn't taken my mentor's advice and actually done the job that I was hired for really, really, really well. And at moments when I didn't strike that balance, I felt that on one end, I'm the subject of a lot of envy from others. And on the other end, some senior leaders are slightly less fond of me than they were 6 months back. So it was this weird dynamic where I felt that, oh my God, I'm being crushed from all places. And you just have to pick and choose your battles. Ultimately, as Pramath said, you got to be authentic to yourself, to your mission, and you should be ready for the knocks that come your way. Just before this podcast started, I got rejection from like something that I had applied for in the writing domain. But that's fine. I expect to have unpleasant outcomes because I take many chances. I just need one or two of them to work out, and I'm absolutely okay with getting knocked out from many opportunities. This comes back to the luck surface area. Unless and until you're ready to get yourself kicked a bit, unless and until you're ready to have this dynamic that feels uncomfortable for a while, I feel that emerging from it is a bit hard, I would.
Pramath, do you want to add something?
I'll quickly only say first, find out why. What is the reason behind them not appreciating your work? Are they truly being unfair to you? Or is it that you have a heightened sense of how you're performing? And there's a mismatch in whether they think you're performing well versus you think you're performing well. So I think it's important to gauge that. And that's about the authenticity of your work, which is the first point I made earlier. The second thing is what Utkarsh is saying. Maybe you need to say, fine, this piece of my work is not getting recognized. As long as I'm delivering and they're happy with it, which is what you seem to be saying, that they know they cannot afford to leave you. Can I get myself something to feed my soul in another area in the organization? It's not just the organization to appreciate you. If you're not getting appreciated because Seema is not nice to you, go do a project for Utkarsh or volunteer to do something else in the organization. And finally, life's too short. So if they're being really nasty and they're not giving you your due credit, even after you've tried it a few times, do something outside. If you can't give up the job, it's a cushy job, you're getting a good salary, large organization, go do some work outside that gives you recognition. And finally, if they're really bad, then leave them. Don't have to stick and be in organizations and be unappreciated if genuinely you are. So I think there are multiple options. You got to do something about it. I think sometimes, again, going back to what Utkarsh is saying, this is a career problem. Don't take yourself and your career too seriously. It'll happen many times in your life. Treat it as a problem and solve it, rather than saying, oh, these guys are being unfair to me, or I need to be recognized. Well, it could be happening for many reasons. So first, do you know why it's happening? Do you really know why it's happening? And if you know why it's happening, then solve for it as you would solve any problem. Solve it as if you are solving Utkarsh's problem with his organization, not your own problem. Don't personalize it.
I'll take one more quick question and then I'll maybe Pramath, you can ask a question to Utkarsh after that. It'll be fun, but make it a tough one. This is Riddhi Tuli. She says, as the paradox of choice theory states, having too many choices can confuse us. How do we narrow down and focus on 2 or 3 career choices in the sea of various choices that we have? Pramath, take that first.
I don't know about how to narrow down. My answer is take the first thing that comes your way and just do it. See, there are infinite career choices. Now, most people want to predict what is the right career to pursue. But I think you patently cannot do that. I just think you can't. You can't say, I will be successful in this career and not in this career. I don't think God can tell you that. So all we know is what we don't want to do sometimes, because we've done it before and we don't like it, or we are not good at it, or I don't want to go live in Bangalore, or I don't want to be traveling, whatever. I think there are certain dislikes we have put that would filter things out. But once you've got choices, there's no point in having a theoretical debate about should I do consulting versus should I do product management versus should I do marketing. If you're truly undecided and you don't know, well, let the career choose you. Go out and look at all those careers. And the first one that comes your way that you like, try it out. If it works, you'll love it and you'll stay there for a few years. And then again, you will probably want to change anyway. And if you don't like it, go change. I really think that and this seems like I'm suggesting a random or a very fatalistic kind of attitude. I'm not. This is a deliberate strategy. Because if you don't know, that's great. You can do anything. Why would you want to say, no, tell me, Utkarsh, let me talk to Utkarsh. And a lot of people come to me and help me decide. Are, how can I help you decide? Yeah? It's great that you don't know. It's okay. Then you have multiple options. Why do you have to choose now? Let them choose you and then you decide whether you want to do it or not. Utkarsh, please add.
Yeah, this is a great place to start by looking at what you don't want to do. So as much as you can eliminate, I definitely do not want to go in that direction, that'll bring you towards clarity. So I created on Network Capital this nano degree program called I Don't Know What I Want to Do with My Life.
Yes, I remember that.
Precisely meant because this career navigation is a big question, and a lot of times we'll feel pressured that I must have the clarity of Pramath or Seema or another distinguished person from day one. And I think clarity is an iterative process. To answer your specific question, remember this: explore, then exploit. So 20 years back, this model used to be, spend your 20s exploring, your 30s sort of exploiting, 40s really going deep into one thing. But in the 100-year life, this explore, exploit matrix need to be followed every few years. Take the time to explore everything that catches your fancy and eliminate with passion. Anything that you don't feel energized towards, remove that. But whatever you're left with, you just need 1 or 2 bets in life to really work out in order to have a good life, successful financially, and having like a good sense of your meaning, purpose, autonomy, everything that you're taking care of. I've invested in about 15 companies so far. And I can tell you that 2 out of those 15 companies will lead me if I happen to become a successful investor through them. Just 1 or 2 companies will lead me there. I have taken 15 decisions in 2023. Just 2 of them will get me to the outcome that you want. The moral of the story is that feel free to make as many mistakes as long as you learn something from the mistake. You would have heard of the story of Isaac Newton sitting under an apple tree, and the apple fell on his head and he discovered gravity. This is an entirely apocryphal story. There's no truth to it. You do not discover what you want to do with your life sitting under a tree. You actually need to, as Pramath was saying, do this deliberate experimentation, remove stuff that doesn't work, and double down on few of your curiosities. If you do that for long enough, I think you cannot not succeed.
Gosh, I sat under this tree and got my picture taken. They told me this is where Isaac Newton sat. The apple has still not fallen on my head. I'm waiting.
It fell on the side, Pramath.
Thank you, Seema. Rub it in.
All right. So we have a question and a longish philosophical question, and I think Utkarsh should take a stab at this. This is from Shailesh. Shailesh is a part of our cohort 3 at the Accelerated Management Program, and Pramath, he's waiting for many more sessions to come from you. So let's see how Utkarsh handles this question. He says, do you think in India, most people base their career choices on expected financial rewards and social standing that these particular jobs offer? Consequently, many individuals discover themselves confined to professions they lack enthusiasm for, hindered by financial constraints. Interestingly, a significant number of people are unaware of the predicament they are in. And he's added a part 2. Do you think providing fundamental financial education very early will help to address this long-term problem?
Okay. Thank you very much, and Shailesh, congratulations for being part of Harappa School of Leadership. Towards the end, I'll just share a couple of thoughts around the program, if you will. But to your second part of the question, do you think fundamental education should be done early on? I don't think so. I think children and young students should be allowed to experiment without feeling any pressure to study wealth management in school. It doesn't mean that they should not learn to manage money. It should not be that they should be indifferent towards capital. But I think the fundamental building blocks of learning need to be in place in school, in college. The Young India Fellowship Program, I took my classes very seriously. And the best thing that I picked up from my classes was that if you have a really solid foundation in sociology, what you learn about in organizational behavior will seem very easy in business school, because you don't just know the theory, you know 2 steps deeper than that. So you should learn the fundamentals of finances when you want, learn by doing, and be very careful of YouTube trips on investing. They almost always backfire. Fundamental, like strategies of looking at index stocks, index funds, looking at companies' strong financials, reading Charlie Munger's work on financial strategy, reading the same text over and over again, Benjamin Graham's work, if you really want to go deep, it's going to be a lot more useful than hacks about investing. A lot of influencers did that, and that really backfired for them and for the people. So that's one. To your first question about career choices in India, and do we feel pressured, and is education...
I'll give you a minute to think about that first part. But on the second part, I just want to say that I do think that one thing I've been saying to people more and more is that if we are to believe the long-term economic growth of India relative to the rest of the world, then there's an unprecedented opportunity for young people to start prudently investing a small amount of money, that whatever they can afford now, because the compounding effect and the probably somewhat assured, I'm not an expert, so I'm not doing a hack or a pitch here. It's important to think about that. I didn't have that opportunity when I was your age to invest like you're investing in startups, or to put money into the stock market and take advantage of the larger economic progress in the country. And that's something to think about for young people today, because that takes the pressure of having to find that job that's going to pay you a lot of money. You can put whatever you have to work and also try and make money that way. You don't have to do a startup. You don't have to try and get a high-paying job. There's also this other way. In the old days, our parents used to put money into those continuous saving schemes, right? Where every month you had to deposit something. But in those cases, you only earned the bank rate, which was a low rate.
I think Pramath had a connection issue, right?
Yeah, I think I'm not able to see him. But as Pramath comes back, I think that's an important point that he's making, and I hope he's able to get his internet back in time. Look, Shailesh, your question was about wealth management strategies too early on. That I would caution you against. But building a fundamental first principles based investment plan, that's something that young people, school students should look at, either through real money, or there are many kinds of applications that allow you to use mock money and see how they do it. Generally, I think you should keep in mind that the art of managing and allocating capital is, cannot happen without compounding. This get rich quick schemes, they almost always backfire. So I think Pramath's point is a really important one. So to your specific question, wealth management strategies, I would not be able to say that learn it too quickly, but fundamental investing, learning about compounding, that kids should. In our school, Network Capital schools that we run, we do have programs that just focus on compounding. Why? Because compounding is not intuitive. If you get 1% better every day, which is a popular meme, on the 365th day, you'll be 37 percentage points higher. But if you get 1% worse every day, you would be a very, very small percentage of what you started out with. Warren Buffett's career, one of the reasons why he's very rich, and he says, is that I started early. He was 13. He ignored all popular advice. He only invests in businesses with a very clear moat where compounding can work its magic. And he doesn't need to work particularly hard. He spends half of his day reading. He reads 500 pages a day. I know very, 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 very few people who do have anywhere comparable reading habits, so to speak. So yeah, Pramath, I was just agreeing with, or just building off of what you were saying.
No, but
I would
please
say
go back to your part one, because I think that's also valuable. You're going to talk. I interrupted you.
No, but I just wanted to get your thoughts. I think we agree on this one. Wealth management strategies, I think we can avoid.
Of course. I was talking about the first part.
Yeah. The compounding, 100%.
I think that's an interesting opportunity for young people today, right?
Yeah.
And us too. I think people who are Seema and my age, right? We can either keep toiling away, because if we are going to live longer and so on, and costs are going up, and people like at her age and me worry about health and so on. But if you really are wise about it, then you would take advantage of the 12, 13, 14, 15% compounding that's happening, that is likely to happen, given the current dynamic in the world.
Yeah.
It's just that we are at the right place at the right time.
Yeah. And what a lot of people say, that you can only get wealthy if you have a small part of the pie.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to acquire intellectual wealth or financial wealth on a salary for long enough. So you do need to have some sort of an owner mindset. If you're a student at Ashoka or Harappa or any other school, you need to feel a co-creator, which means that the problems are also your problems and the upside is also your side. You cannot say, I only want the upside, I'll not take any, I won't give any help when there is a problem. No, that's not an ownership mind. Ownership mind, this is a shared creation. I'm there on a good day, I'm there on a bad day. I'm there for the heartburn that comes in and around with it. Your first question, I feel that the alchemy of career decisions in India is very, very dangerous. We first get an insurance policy by getting into a good school or a good program, and then we sort of figure out what we want to do with our life. And along the way, we want to have meaning, we want to have freedom, we want to feel that we have created enough wealth. That is just setting us up for a lot of expectations, the burden of great expectations. So I think we should be very careful of that. And I think there is very much a pressure to achieve financial wealth and so forth from early on, because life has become expensive. And also we see things on social media, people talking about their cars and vacations, etc. It's just an anxious time. But I will tell you that, again, you don't necessarily need to approach capital accumulation throughout your life. I'll tell you about my own. In the first, I worked at Teach for India before joining Ashoka Young India Fellowship. Ashoka was fully funded. So even though I had barely a significant salary in the nonprofit space, I could manage. And then I took a $200,000 loan and went to a good MBA program. And then I met with an accident right after the MBA program. So at 25 and a half, my net worth was minus $200,000 plus interest. That's a very scary thought. But now, 10 years out, I can say that the fact that the first 3 years of my career, I basically experimented purposefully, so that when I graduated, I spent the next many years focused on doing, the adult-like things, capital, growing in career, doing what you want, but doing it with a sense of purpose. So if you look at my own capital experience, it is non-linear. It started with deliberately choosing lower pay for better experiences, then combining all these experiences, education and otherwise, to do something that I truly cared about, and do it for long enough so that your luck surface area is enough for you to be positioned for success. So again,
I'm going to break in and quickly say that we have 2 more questions and we are almost over time. Is that okay? Did you want to add something else, Utkarsh?
I think Shailesh got what I was saying. If you want to
Right.
follow up, Shailesh, let me know.
All right. Very quickly, Shaleen Mishra wants to know that we take decisions at different stages of our life and career. How do we understand that the decision taken is right or wrong and move on to a better decision? Or should we stick to the same decision and wait for things to happen? Because at the end of the day, we all want to be successful, but how shall we pursue this success or happiness? Or how can both be achieved? So many questions here, not one. Essentially, how do you know that the decision you've taken is right or wrong? If you think it's wrong, when do you move on, or do you stay on and make things work? And how do you choose between success and happiness? Short, quick answers. Anyone?
Okay.
I'll start in the reverse order, and then Utkarsh can add. You choose happiness over success always. And I'm not trying to tell you anything that is very deep. If you read Indian philosophy, and I should say this in front of Utkarsh because I haven't read it, but my view is that we chase success to be happy. We have to be first happy to get successful. So that's number one. Number two, there is no answer to this. 1 year, 6 months, 2 years, 3 years. How can you answer a question like that? How long? Or how will you? You just know if you are not feeling like you are being authentic, as the way I described it. If you are feeling uncomfortable, if you're feeling unhappy, if you don't like doing what you do, if you can't wake up in the morning, if you don't like your boss, I think all of those reasons are reasons why you know that you made a wrong choice. In fact, my career, every time I've thought lots about something, talked to 15 people, should I not? And then said, okay, now I've got all the information, I go do it. And within 18 months, I know it's a disaster. Actually, within 18 months, I've left. I know it's a disaster within 6 to 12 months. And then it's about how do you get out of it. I left academia because of that, having studied to be an academic for 5 years. I left my CEO job after leaving McKinsey. After 13 years of McKinsey, I go into this job thinking I'm going to change the world. 18 months later, I've resigned. So you'll know pretty quickly whether something is not worth sticking out. And then you should cut your corners and move on, cut your losses and move on. I don't think there is a standard time to it, but you'll know. And when you know, and you try, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not the end of the world. There are many, many other opportunities ahead of you. Don't become a quitter and don't change too often. Give it a shot. Talk to people, make sure that you understand you gave it enough of a shot, and then take a call. Add to it, Utkarsh. Over to you.
Yeah. Thanks, Pramath. So I think let's start by differentiating reversible and irreversible decisions. So if you're taking an irreversible decision, like who's the set of mentors that you really want to commit your life to? I mean, be careful about that choice. Who's the person you want to marry, or where do you want to really live? These are things that you should really, really think through. But there are many tiny decisions. I call the tyranny of micro decision making. Irreversible decisions you can come back to. Then in terms of choosing happiness or success, I think I feel that you should choose neither. You should choose meaning. If you do something that you find meaningful for long enough, success and happiness will be a byproduct. Pramath likes poetry a lot. I don't think that working on poetry necessarily is related to his day job as a board member, as CEO, etc. But he does that. He's done that now for long enough, and I think he finds a lot of meaning in it. So optimize for meaning. Happiness is also important, but I think meaning is probably slightly more. And I think lastly, that please don't be worried to get all decisions right. I think I don't want to focus only on my examples, but Warren Buffett's stock portfolio is a really good one. But the thing that actually got him rich are 6 or 7 stocks, which means that even a person of his distinguished credential in picking stocks, getting financial, got most of it wrong. Moral of the story, get a few big decisions right, you'll be fine.
All right, very quickly, one last question. I know we're almost at time. This is Vignesh. Based on your experience of observing and studying careers of various people, do late bloomers really exist? I have read of stories of late bloomers in the field of business, but I'm yet to find about a late bloomer in terms of corporate careers. Short answer.
That's a very, very interesting question. Yeah. I would say, look, in the field of sports, age is a definite disadvantage. When you're doing scientific research, it tends to be a little bit of a disadvantage. In corporate careers, I have seen, or I think especially in the future, you will find a lot more of late bloomers, people who are transitioning from, say, politics to business or from business to politics. You will see more 60-year-old CEOs. I saw somebody on Network Capital who we gave the award of 70 over 70. He got fired the day he was on his 35th or 40th work anniversary, and he started a new company after that. So I think the way we work is going to change. So I'll be very surprised if we don't see too many late bloomers in the corporate world. But maybe, Pramath, you want to, we'd love to get your take on it.
I don't know how you are meaning this, but I have found that a lot of people, I think the answer is yes. But you see the late blooming happen when people actually make a switch. So they've been working in a large organization, they've been going through the rungs, and they are seeming like one of the many thousands of people in that level, in that role. Suddenly they take a pivot, go into a new role. And yeah, boom, stuff happens. I know people who bloomed in their 40s. I know a few people who bloomed in their 50s. I know people who never bloomed in their corporate career, but suddenly went into a post-retirement world and bloomed. So I would not like to say that there is any absolute answer to saying you can't bloom. Of course you can. I think the more willing to experiment you are, the more the chances that you can bloom late. And maybe there are few examples, but those are the examples that prove to you that it's possible. I think most people are not willing to take the risk because they are not willing to take those chances that will show that they can be a late bloomer, because they've fed themselves the narrative that they will never bloom, or that they are doing what they are good enough. And honestly, to be a late bloomer, you have to really push yourself. Just to be a bloomer, forget late bloomer, you have to constantly push yourself. It's like Utkarsh going studying philosophy at Oxford, or Seema saying, I want to leave my journalistic career and go work for this startup called Harappa. I mean, these are the kinds of choices you have to make if you want to bloom, whether you are late or early.
All right. Thank you so much, both of you. Utkarsh, any quick words about, I know I sent you the brochure of AMP, anything that you'd like to add quickly, and then we can close off.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love for people to take the AMP program, the 14 hours dedicated that Harappa asks, as the most serious hours during the week. Look, this kind of mentality that I've had during my MBA at INSEAD, during Young India Fellowships, Ashoka University's Young India Fellowship, now at Oxford, before that at the Shivning Fellowship, when you put pressure on yourself to be at your highest output when you are in class, when you're doing on it, it really changes the way you think. And I'm a big beneficiary of these artificial constraints. So if I were to give one advice, would be those 14 hours that you spend for the next 6 months, you will reap the benefits for the rest of your life. But you really need to be in it. You can't sort of be doing it. That doesn't work.
All right. Thank you so much, both of you. I know we went 15 minutes over, but I thought it was an interesting discussion, really exciting. Thank you, Utkarsh. Thank you, Pramath. We'll stop here now.
Utkarsh, thank you for doing this. Really appreciate it.